Hey guys, tonight we begin with something that Hollywood painted as freedom, glory, and endless sunsets, the Wild West. You've seen it 1,000 times. Rugged cowboys riding into town, quick-draw duels at high noon, striking it rich in gold country, living by your own rules under big open skies. Sounds romantic, right? Wrong. The reality was dust in your lungs, death around every corner, and the slow realization that the frontier wasn't freedom. It was a meat grinder disguised as opportunity, and most people who wandered into it got chewed up and spit out before they ever saw their first sunset. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy the chaos I'm about to walk you through here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world, especially those of you watching this from the comforts of indoor plumbing and reliable law enforcement. Congratulations, you've just arrived in the Wild West. Maybe you're in a dusty cattle town in Texas. Maybe you're in a ramshackle mining camp in Nevada. Maybe you're on the trail somewhere between civilization and absolute nowhere. Doesn't matter. What matters is this. You're about to have the worst day of your life, and it starts the moment you open your eyes. You wake up, if you can call it that, in whatever makeshift shelter you managed to secure last night. If you're lucky, it's a sagging canvas tent that smells like mildew and horse sweat. If you're not, it's a patch of dirt behind a saloon where you curled up next to a pile of garbage and hoped nothing bit you in the night. Spoiler alert, something bit you. Multiple somethings, actually. Bedbugs, fleas, possibly a scorpion that wandered in looking for warmth. You've got welts on your arms, your back itches like someone rubbed it with sandpaper, and there's a fine layer of dust coating your mouth, eyes, and every exposed inch of skin. The smell hits you next. It's not subtle. It's a robust bouquet of unwashed bodies, horse manure, tobacco spit, rotting garbage, and something unidentifiable but deeply concerning wafting in from the direction of the outhouse. Or more accurately, the hole in the ground, 20 feet away, that everyone's been using for weeks. There's no morning breeze to clear it out. Just hot, stale air that tastes like you're breathing through a dirty sock soaked in whiskey and regret. You try to stretch, your back cracks like a gunshot, your joints ache. You slept on the ground, or on a straw mattress so thin you might as well have slept on a pile of rocks. No pillow, no blanket thick enough to block the cold desert night. And now the sun's coming up, which means in about 30 minutes this place is going to turn into an oven, and you're going to spend the rest of the day baking like a potato in a coat you can't afford to take off, because sunburn out here doesn't tan you, it destroys you. You stagger to your feet, brushing off dust, insects, and regret. There's no shower, no sink, no running water of any kind, unless you count the murky trough outside, where the horses drink. And yes, people wash their faces in it too. You splash some of that questionable water on your face, trying not to think about what else has been in there, and you're officially awake. Your hair is matted with sweat and dirt. Your clothes are the same ones you wore yesterday, and the day before that, and the week before that. Laundry? That's a luxury you can't afford, both in terms of time and the precious water it would require. So you smell. Everyone smells. The whole town smells like a locker room that's been marinating in its own funk for 6 months. Congratulations! You've survived the first 10 minutes, only 16 more waking hours to go. Now let's talk about breakfast. You're hungry. You're always hungry out here because food is expensive, scarce, and rarely fresh. If you've got a few coins, you might head to the nearest saloon or boarding house and hope they're serving something edible. What you get is beans, again. Maybe some salt pork if you're lucky, fried so hard it could double as a weapon. Possibly a biscuit that tastes like flour and sadness. Baked yesterday, or possibly last week. Hard to tell, really, since they've both got the same texture of sun-dried adobe. No eggs unless a chicken wandered into town recently and didn't get stolen. No bacon unless someone decided to slaughter a pig and share. No fruit, no vegetables, no variety whatsoever. You eat the same thing every day, and your body hates you for it. Scurvy is a real possibility if you're out here long enough, and your teeth are already starting to feel loose from the lack of nutrition. Your gums bleed when you chew, your skin bruises easily. You've got no energy, but that doesn't matter because work doesn't care about your vitamin C deficiency. The coffee, though, that's the one bright spot. Sort of. It's strong enough to wake the dead, served in a tin cup that hasn't been properly cleaned since the last election. The grounds float on top like little islands of bitterness, and you swallow them because straining is for people with standards you can no longer afford. It burns going down, tastes like it was brewed in a boot, and somehow manages to be both too weak and too strong at the same time. But it's hot, it's caffeinated, and it gives you the illusion that you might survive another day. So you drink it, grimace, and try not to think about the fact that this might genuinely be the best part of your morning. But you choke it all down because this might be the only meal you get today, and you've got work to do. Work. Right. Let's talk about your job, assuming you have one. Because in the Wild West, employment is a daily gamble, and the house always wins. Maybe you're a ranch hand, which means you spend 12 hours a day in the saddle, herding cattle that don't want to be herded, fixing fences in blistering heat, and sleeping under the stars while coyotes howl and rattlesnakes slither past your bedroll. Your pay? Maybe $1 a day if the rancher's feeling generous, which he usually isn't. The perks? Occasional meals and the privilege of not being shot by outlaws. Yet, the work is brutal. You're up before dawn, riding out to find stray cattle. Your horse is half wild, constantly testing whether today's the day it throws you off and runs away. Your saddle is hard leather that's rubbed your inner thighs raw. Every movement hurts. Your hands are calloused and cracked from rope burns. Your face is leather from sun exposure. And the cattle? They're ornery, stupid, and perfectly happy to trample you if you're not paying attention. Maybe you're a prospector, which sounds adventurous until you realise it means standing waist deep in freezing river water for 10 hours, panning for gold you'll never find, while your hands crack and bleed from the cold. The romantic image is you finding a nugget the size of your fist and retiring rich. The reality is, you find nothing. Day after day, week after week, month after month, you crouch by that river until your back permanently bends, until your fingers are so numb you can't feel the pan anymore, until you've convinced yourself that tomorrow will be the day. It never is. Or you're digging in hard rock with a pickaxe, breathing in dust and praying the tunnel doesn't collapse on your head. Thousands of people came west chasing gold. Most of them found dysentery, broken dreams, and early graves. The ones who did strike it rich usually got robbed, drank themselves to death, or gambled it all away within 6 months. The mining camps were filled with men who arrived with hope and left in pine boxes. Maybe you're working in a mine which is somehow even worse. Dark, cramped tunnels where the air is thick with dust and gas, no ventilation, no safety regulations, no workers' compensation. Just you, a candle, and the constant fear that today's the day the whole thing comes down. Mining accidents were common, and when they happened, nobody came to rescue you. They just sealed off that section, said a quick prayer if they were feeling generous, and kept digging somewhere else. The conditions underground are hellish. The temperature is either freezing or boiling, depending on how deep you are. The air is so thick with dust that breathing feels like drowning on land. The candle flickers constantly, threatening to go out and leave you in absolute darkness, hundreds of feet below the surface. And the sounds, the creaking of support beams, the drip of water that might mean the tunnel is flooding, the distant rumble that could be a cave-in or could be nothing. You learn to work in a state of constant, low-level terror. Let's pause here and talk about water, because in the Wild West, water is trying to kill you. There's no filtration system, no water treatment plants, no understanding of bacteria or parasites. You drink from rivers that cattle have been standing in, doing all the things cattle do. You drink from wells that might be contaminated with dead animals, human waste, minerals that'll poison you slowly. You drink from barrels that have been sitting in the sun, growing algae and possibly harboring typhoid. Cholera, dysentery, typhoid fever, these aren't just words. They're death sentences disguised as stomach cramps. And they spread fast in places where sanitation is non-existent. And everyone's drinking from the same questionable sources. The symptoms start innocently enough. Your stomach hurts, you think it's just the salt pork. Then the cramps intensify. Then the fever hits. Then you can't keep anything down. Not water, not food, nothing. You're losing fluids faster than you can replace them, which is a problem when the only available water is what gave you the disease in the first place. You might survive a gunfight, but a bad batch of water, that'll take you down just as quick. And it's a lot less glamorous. No final showdown, no last words. Just you, alone in your tent, violently ill, hoping someone finds you before dehydration finishes the job. By mid-morning, the heat is unbearable. The sun beats down like it has a personal grudge against you. There's no shade unless you count the narrow strip next to a building, and even that disappears by noon when the sun is directly overhead, turning the whole town into an open-air oven. You're wearing wool because that's what you've got, and it's soaked through with sweat. Your hat helps, barely, but your face is sunburned, your lips are cracked and bleeding, and you're so thirsty you'd drink from a cactus if you knew how. The temperature swings are insane. Last night you were freezing, wrapped in every piece of fabric you own, teeth chattering. Now it's easily over 100 degrees and you're baking inside your own clothes. There's no air conditioning, no fans, not even a decent breeze most days, just hot air that feels like opening an oven door directly into your face. Dust is everywhere. In your eyes, your nose, your mouth. It coats your clothes, your hair, your skin. You breathe it in with every breath, and it settles in your lungs, like a slow, gritty death. There's no escaping it. The wind kicks it up in clouds. Horses kick it up with every step. Wagons rolling through town turn the streets into choking brown fog. You cough constantly, and when you spit, it comes out brown. After a few months of this, you develop what they call miner's lung, a permanent, hacking cough that eventually kills you, just slowly enough that you get to suffer first. And speaking of horses, let's talk about transportation. You don't have a car, you don't have a bicycle, you've got a horse if you're lucky, or you're walking if you're not. Horses are expensive to buy. A decent one costs about $50, which is 2 months' wages for most people. They're expensive to feed, especially in places where grass is scarce and hay has to be imported. And they're prone to going lame, getting stolen, getting spooked and running off, or just dying because frontier veterinary care is hope for the best. If your horse dies, you're stranded. And if you're stranded in the desert or the plains, that's it. You die too. No roadside assistance, no passing cars, just you, the buzzards circling overhead, and the slow realization that you're about to become part of the landscape. Let's say you survive the morning and make it to afternoon. You're exhausted, dehydrated, and covered in dust. Now it's time to navigate the lovely social environment of a Wild West town. And by social environment, I mean a powder keg of armed, drunk, desperate men with short tempers and poor impulse control. The town itself is barely a town. It's a collection of wooden shacks slapped together with hope and nails, connected by dirt streets that turn into rivers of mud when it rains, and concrete hard ruts when it's dry. There's a saloon, obviously, a general store where everything costs 3 times what it should because shipping is a nightmare. Maybe a blacksmith, possibly a church, definitely an undertaker, because business is good. The buildings are rough-hewn wood, unpainted, already weathering grey under the relentless sun. Some of them lean at concerning angles because nobody bothered with a level foundation. Most have false fronts to make them look bigger and more impressive than they are. 2-story facades on 1-story buildings. the Wild West equivalent of Instagram filters. Law enforcement depends on the town. Some places have a marshal or sheriff, others have a self-appointed vigilance committee that's just as likely to hang an innocent man as a guilty one, because they're working off rumours and mob mentality. And some towns have no law at all, which means justice is whatever the guy with the biggest gun says it is. You walk carefully. You make eye contact with no one. Because in the Wild West, looking at someone the wrong way can get you challenged to a duel. Bumping into someone can start a brawl. Insulting someone, even accidentally, can result in a bullet. And these aren't Hollywood duels where two men stand 30 paces apart at high noon, while the whole town watches in respectful silence. These are sudden, ugly, close-range shootings in saloons, alleys, or the middle of the street. Someone pulls a gun, someone fires, and someone dies. Then everyone goes back to drinking. Violence is everywhere. Fistfights break out over poker games, land disputes, perceived insults, or just because it's been a long week and someone needs to hit something. Bar brawls are common, stabbings are common, shootings are common, and the consequences? Minimal. If the dead guy was unpopular, nobody cares. Someone just drags the body out back, rifles through his pockets for anything valuable, and that's the end of it. The undertaker does brisk business. He's one of the few people guaranteed to make money in any Wild West town. He builds cheap pine coffins, charges whatever he thinks the deceased's friends can afford, and buries people in the cemetery on the edge of town. Unmarked graves for those who couldn't afford a headstone, which is most people. By evening, you're still alive, which honestly is an achievement worth celebrating. You head back to the saloon because that's where everyone goes. It's the social hub, the restaurant, the entertainment venue, the unofficial town hall, and the fight club, all rolled into one poorly lit, badly ventilated room that smells like a distillery exploded in a stable. The moment you walk through those swinging doors, you're hit with a wall of sound and smell. The sound is a cacophony of voices, laughter, arguing, the occasional crash of furniture, and a piano being played by someone who learned 3 songs and is determined to play all 3 on repeat. The smell is layers upon layers of sensory assault. Tobacco smoke hangs in the air, so thick you can practically chew it. Spilled beer soaks into wooden floors that haven't been properly cleaned since the building went up. Body odour from men who haven't bathed in weeks mingles with horse sweat, leather, and the occasional whiff of perfume from the saloon girls. Underneath it all is the sour, sweet smell of vomit, because someone always drinks too much. You sit down at a table that's sticky with spilled beer, and God knows what else. The chairs are wobbly. The table has initials carved into it from people who wanted to leave their mark on something. You order food, beans again, maybe some mystery stew, and whiskey, because the whiskey is safer than the water. The stew arrives. It's grey-brown, steaming slightly, with chunks of something floating in it. Could be beef, could be rabbit, could be something you really don't want to think about. You don't ask, you just eat it, washing it down with whiskey that burns all the way down. The piano player is banging out a tune. Someone in the corner is losing badly at poker and getting loud about it. A saloon girl is working the room, smiling through exhaustion, pretending she's having the time of her life. She's wearing what passes for fancy out here, a dress that's been repaired too many times to count, a little rouge that's mostly worn off. You eat quickly, you drink slowly, you keep your head down, because you've learned that blending in is survival. Don't be interesting, don't be noticeable, just be another dusty, tired face trying to make it through another day. And then, inevitably, something happens. Maybe someone accuses someone else of cheating at cards. Maybe a drunk cowboy decides tonight's the night. He proves he's the toughest man in the room. The volume in the saloon drops suddenly, that moment of tense silence before everything goes to hell. Someone throws the first punch. It misses completely and hits a bystander, who wasn't even involved but is now highly motivated to participate. Within seconds, the entire room erupts. Chairs fly, bottles break, someone crashes through a window. The sound of fists hitting faces, bodies hitting floors, furniture hitting walls. It's chaos. Someone pulls a knife, someone else pulls a gun. There's a shot, deafening, in the enclosed space, and suddenly everyone freezes. Smoke drifts from the barrel. Someone's on the floor, clutching their shoulder, bleeding and cursing. The bartender fires a shotgun into the ceiling. Wood splinters rain down, and bellows at everyone to get out or settle down. You crawl out from under the table, duck past the ongoing scuffle, and slip through the swinging doors into the night. Night falls fast in the west. The temperature drops like a stone. You head back to your tent or your rented corner of a boarding house, shivering already. The temperature drop is dramatic. It was over 100 degrees this afternoon. Now it's maybe 50, heading toward freezing. No heater, no fireplace unless you've got wood. You wrap yourself in whatever blanket you've got, wool, thin, full of holes. You curl up on the hard ground and try to sleep. But sleep doesn't come easy. The ground is hard and uneven. Rocks dig into your back, your joints ache, your stomach growls. And the noises, coyotes howl in the distance, drunks fight in the street. The wind rattles everything that isn't nailed down. A gunshot cracks through the night, and you barely flinch. You lie there, exhausted but too uncomfortable to sleep deeply. Your body hurts. You're sunburned, dehydrated, malnourished, and probably coming down with something. Let's talk about medical care. Let's say you get injured, kicked by a horse, shot during a brawl, stepped on a rusty nail. If you're in a decent-sized town, there might be a doctor. Maybe. The doctors who came west were a mixed bag. Some were legitimately trained physicians. Others were con artists with a bag full of medicines that were mostly alcohol and opium. Let's say you got shot. If the bullet went clean through, you might be lucky. The doctor pours whiskey on it, bandages it with cloth that may or may not be clean, and tells you to rest. If the bullet's still in there, he has to dig it out with a knife, maybe forceps. Anesthesia, you get whiskey and a leather strap to bite down on. Then he digs around in your flesh while you scream. Even if he gets the bullet out, infection is almost guaranteed. There's no understanding of germ theory. The doctor doesn't wash his hands. His instruments aren't sterilized. Within days, your wound is red, swelling, oozing pus. Gangrene sets in. And the treatment? Amputation. You get more whiskey, maybe some laudanum, and the doctor takes a saw and starts cutting through your leg. If you survive, and that's a big if, you now have to survive the recovery. And if you do, you're now a one-legged person in a world that requires physical labor to survive. Women had it even worse. Pregnancy and childbirth were terrifying. No hospitals, maybe a midwife if you were lucky. Childbirth complications were a leading cause of death. Babies died frequently too. Some estimates suggest 1 in 3 children didn't make it to their 5th birthday. And the psychological toll, the isolation, the danger, the constant stress, it ground people down. Mental health wasn't a recognized concept. If you were depressed, anxious, traumatized, you just lived with it. The suicide rate was high. Women especially suffered from isolation. In remote ranches, you might be the only woman for miles, no friends, no companionship, just endless work and crushing loneliness. Let's talk about the law. In many parts of the West, there was almost no legal structure. Justice was whatever the community decided, and the community was often a mob. Vigilante justice was common. Someone committed a crime or was accused of one, and the townspeople would hold a quick trial and hang the accused. Sometimes they got the right person, sometimes they didn't. And the outlaws thrived. Bank robberies, train robberies, cattle rustling, murder. Gangs operated with impunity because law enforcement was sparse and outgunned. Even when outlaws were caught, justice was uncertain. Jails were flimsy structures that people regularly escaped from, and executions were public spectacles. Hangings drew crowds, people brought their children. it was entertainment. So, how's your day in the Wild West been? You woke up covered in bugs, ate beans and regret, worked yourself half to death for pocket change, dodged violence multiple times, drank questionable water, survived a saloon brawl, and went to bed hungry, cold, and wondering if this is really the freedom everyone promised. Still dreaming of the cowboy life, of wide open spaces and rugged individualism? The myth is powerful. We've built movies, books, and entire cultural identities around it. The lone cowboy riding into the sunset, the prospector striking it rich, the frontier town where anyone can make a new start. But the reality was harsh, brutal, and short for most people who lived it. The good guys weren't that good. The lawmen were often corrupt. The outlaws were just desperate men with guns. And the frontier wasn't a blank slate. It was a killing field where nature, disease, violence, and sheer bad luck took out most people. The West wasn't won, it was survived. By the toughest, the luckiest, or the ones willing to do whatever it took. For every success story, there were 100 graves. For every ranch that prospered, 10 failed. For every miner who struck gold, thousands died broke. The people who thrived were often the ones who profited off other people's dreams. The merchants who sold supplies at inflated prices. The saloon owners, the undertakers, they didn't pan for gold or drive cattle. They set up shop and let everyone else do the dying. But here's the thing. Despite all that suffering, people kept coming. They crossed deserts, they climbed mountains, they risked everything for a sliver of hope that life could be better. Why? Because the alternative back east wasn't much better. At least in the West, you had a chance. They built towns in the dust, they raised families in tents, they found love in saloons and made communities out of strangers. Not because it was easy, but because humans are stubbornly hopeful, even in the face of impossible odds. They endured heat that would kill modern humans. They survived winters that would freeze people solid. They worked jobs that destroyed their bodies. They watched children die, spouses die, friends die, and still got up the next morning and kept going. So tonight, when you turn on your faucet and clean water comes out, water that won't give you cholera, take a moment to appreciate it. When you eat food that won't give you dysentery, when you sleep in a bed without scorpions, in a room with climate control, when you wake up with a reasonable expectation that you won't be shot today, take a moment to appreciate all of that, because your ancestors survived the Wild West. They lived through the dust, the violence, the disease, and the endless struggle. They endured it all so you wouldn't have to, and somewhere out there, under the big western sky, their ghosts still ride. Still panning for gold that isn't there, still driving cattle across endless plains, still sitting in those dusty saloons, drinking bad whiskey and telling tall tales. The Wild West wasn't romantic, it was brutal, but it was real. And the people who lived it deserve to be remembered, not as Hollywood cowboys, but as human beings who faced impossible odds and kept going anyway. Because that's what humans do. We endure, even when it hurts, even when it's hopeless. We wake up, brush off the dust and try again. That's the real legacy of the Wild West. Not the gunfights or the gold rushes, but the quiet, stubborn refusal to quit, even when quitting would have been the smart thing to do.